My name is Teresa Hillenbrand. I'm 34 years old, and 2 months ago, my younger sister sent me a text that finally made something snap inside me. "You're just too much drama. Stay away from the wedding." That was it. One sentence. No punctuation, no explanation, just a dismissal, clean, sharp, effortless. Like flicking lint off a sleeve. I remember staring at my phone, rereading it again and again, waiting for context that never came, waiting for a follow-up, waiting for her to say I'm overwhelmed, or I didn't mean it like that. Nothing. What people don't understand about moments like that is it's never just about the message. It's about everything stacked behind it. Years of being useful, years of being dependable, years of swallowing frustration, because that's just how families are. If you had asked anyone in my family 2 months earlier who held everything together, they would have said me without hesitation. I was the reliable one, the calm one, the one who always showed up early, stayed late, fixed problems nobody else wanted to touch. And somehow that also made me the easiest person to ignore. I'm the oldest of three. My sister Alyssa is 29. My brother Liam is 26. Our parents are still together, still living in the same two-story house in upstate New York where we grew up, still insisting everything is fine, even when it clearly isn't. We weren't a loud, chaotic family. No screaming matches, no thrown plates, just a quiet imbalance like a table with one leg shorter than the others. Someone always had to press their foot against it to keep everything steady. That someone was me. Alyssa was the golden child, always had been. Late to school. The bus must have been early. Bad grade. The teacher didn't like her. Lost another job. It just wasn't the right environment, and every time I tried to say something practical, something real, I was labeled harsh, intense, or my personal favorite, dramatic. I learned early that keeping the peace meant staying quiet. Things started unraveling 6 months ago when Alyssa got engaged to her boyfriend, Jordan. He's not a bad man. Quiet, polite, works in IT. The kind of guy who believes the version of Alyssa she shows the world. Soft smiles, curated chaos, Pinterest dreams. Not the one who hasn't held a steady job in years or treats boundaries like personal attacks. When the engagement happened, the family group chat exploded. My mom cried in emojis. My dad started talking venues. And I, without thinking, offered to help. That's what the fixer does. She steps in before anyone asks. I knew my parents didn't have much saved. I knew Alyssa's expectations didn't match her budget. So I told myself I'd help a little, just enough to get things moving. A little became a lot. First the venue deposit, then the dress, then vendors. Thousands of dollars quietly wired, paid, confirmed. Not once did Alyssa ask how it affected me. Not once did she say thank you in a way that felt real. But I didn't mind not yet, because for the first time I felt included, needed, until I wasn't. 3 weeks before that text, she stopped responding. No replies, no callbacks. I told myself it was wedding stress, until Liam casually mentioned he'd been invited to her bridal shower. I hadn't. That should have been my warning. Instead, I kept going. I always did. So when that message finally came, stay away from the wedding, it wasn't shocking. It was clarifying. Because in that moment, sitting alone in my apartment with my phone glowing in my hand, I realized something important. If I was too much drama to attend the wedding, then I was definitely too much to keep paying for it. And that's when I made my decision. Quiet, surgical, final. 3 days later, Alyssa would be standing on my porch, mascara streaked, screaming my name for the neighbors to hear. But first I had calls to make, and everything changed. The thing about being the dependable one is that you don't realize how deep you're in until you stop moving. When I finally sat still after that text, everything I'd done for Alyssa over the last 6 months started replaying in my head like a highlight reel I never asked to watch. I hadn't just helped with the wedding. I'd quietly underwritten it. It started with the venue. A small lakeside lodge an hour outside the city, charming in that rustic but expensive way that only exists on wedding blogs. Alyssa called me in tears one afternoon, breathless and panicked, saying they'd lost their preferred date because they couldn't pull together the deposit fast enough. $3,000. She said it like it was nothing, like it wasn't more than her last 2 months of rent combined. I wired the money the same day. Put the reservation in her name. Told myself it was a one-time thing. Then came the dress. She invited me to the fitting, and I remember feeling oddly honored, like this was proof I mattered. She stepped out of the dressing room, glowing, spun once in front of the mirror, while my mom dabbed at her eyes like we were filming a commercial for unconditional love. The price tag was tucked discreetly behind the veil. $1,750. Alyssa looked at me before anyone else, eyes wide hopeful. I'll pay you back after the wedding, she said quickly, once the gifts come in. That should have been the moment I paused. Instead, I nodded and handed over my card. After that, it was death by 1,000 small yeses. Photographer retainer, DJ deposit, decorator and lighting team. I paid because I could, because no one else stepped up, because saying no would have made me the problem, and I was so used to avoiding that label I didn't even question it anymore. For a while, it almost felt good. Alyssa sent me links to centerpieces, asked my opinion on playlists, included me in late-night planning texts like we were a team. I let myself believe this was different, that this time I wasn't just the safety net, I was part of the celebration. Then the silence started. Her replies got shorter, then slower, then non-existent. Calls went to voicemail. When she did answer, her voice had that clipped edge, the one that said, "Why are you calling me right now?" I told myself she was overwhelmed. Weddings are stressful. That's what everyone says when brides start acting like strangers. The bridal shower was the moment the illusion cracked. Liam mentioned it casually the way you mentioned the weather. Said he and his girlfriend had been invited, showed me the digital invitation on his phone. My name wasn't on it. Not as a guest. Not even as an afterthought. I laughed it off in front of him, made a joke about my email probably eating it. But later that night, I texted Alyssa directly. Something light, playful. "Hey, think my invite got lost." No response. I followed up a few days later. Still nothing. Then my mother called and asked if I'd be free that weekend to help move some gifts from Alyssa's apartment after the shower. I remember gripping the phone so tightly my hand hurt. "She didn't invite me," I said. There was a pause on the other end, just long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. Well, my mom finally said, "I'm sure she just thought it might be awkward with some of her friends there. You know how blunt you can be, Teresa." Blunt. That was the word they used when I didn't pretend things were fine. I agreed to help anyway. Of course I did. That reflex was so deeply wired it didn't even feel like a choice. I loaded boxes of gifts into my SUV, drove them across town, and carried them up to Alyssa's apartment in silence. She wasn't there. Just stacks of pastel-wrapped presents and the lingering scent of perfume and cake from a party I wasn't welcome at. I told myself not to confront her yet, told myself to wait, told myself there would be a right moment. Then came the text, "Stay away from the wedding." And suddenly, every dollar I'd spent, every favor I'd done, every quiet compromise took on a new shape. I wasn't a sister helping out. I was a resource, a wallet, a background character who'd overstepped by expecting respect in return. Sitting there in my apartment phone, face down on the table, I realized something that made my chest feel hollow and sharp at the same time. I had paid for a place I wasn't welcome. And if Alyssa thought she could cut me out emotionally while still benefiting financially, she had misunderstood me completely. Because I was done pretending this was generosity. This was leverage, and I was about to take it back. The first call came the morning after I decided not to respond to Alyssa's text. I was halfway through making coffee when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. It was the florist. She sounded polite but confused the way professionals do when they're trying not to step into family drama. She said Alyssa had called earlier that morning, asking to make changes to the order and to be listed as the sole point of contact going forward. The problem, she explained carefully, was that my name was on the contract, my card, my signature. She just wanted to confirm before doing anything. I thanked her and hung up, staring at the wall long after the line went dead. Then the decorator called. Then the lighting team, then the DJ. All variations of the same question. "Your sister says she's taking over, is that correct?" That was the moment it truly clicked. Alyssa wasn't just uninviting me from the wedding. She was trying to erase me from it entirely while keeping everything I'd paid for. She wanted the benefits without the presents, the money without the person attached to it. It wasn't stress, it wasn't wedding nerves, it was intentional. And somehow that hurt more than the text itself. I decided to stop guessing and go to my parents' house. I still had mail being sent there, and I told myself that was the reason. The truth was, I needed to look them in the eye. My mother answered the door with a tight smile and a glass of white wine, even though it wasn't noon yet. She acted like everything was normal, ushered me inside, asked how work was going. The normalcy made my skin crawl. I asked where Dad was. She said he was out picking up supplies for Alyssa's welcome bags. I blinked. Welcome bags. She waved her hand like it was obvious. Candles, mini champagne bottles, custom tags, All the little extras Alyssa decided she needed. I asked quietly how she was paying for all of that. My mom hesitated. "Just for a second. We're helping," she said. "It's her big day." Something inside me went cold. I set the mail down and told her I was leaving. I didn't trust myself to say anything else. But as I reached the door, she spoke again, and her words landed like a slap. "She told me you threatened to ruin her wedding." I turned slowly. "What?" She said Alyssa was crying, that she claimed I was upset about not being the center of attention, that I was trying to sabotage things out of jealousy, that she was scared of what I might do next. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "She lied," I said. My voice barely sounded like mine. My mother didn't argue. She just looked away. That was the moment everything broke open. Not because Alyssa had lied, she'd always lied, when it suited her, but because my own mother believed her without question. After everything I'd done, after years of proving over and over that I was the stable one. I walked out without another word, sat in my car for 10 minutes with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they shook. Then I drove home. And I made a list. Every vendor, every deposit, every contract with my name on it. I pulled up emails, receipts, confirmations. The venue, the florist, the photographer, the DJ. Thousands of dollars, all booked under me. Not because I was controlling, because I was helping. And now I was done. I didn't yell. I didn't explain myself. I simply called each vendor and calmly canceled every reservation made under my name. Personal emergency. Please revoke the booking. Most were understanding. A few sounded disappointed. One asked if I was sure. I was. The venue was the biggest. $3,000 refundable just inside the window. I canceled. Got written confirmation. The refund would process in 5 business days. Then I forwarded that confirmation to Alyssa. No subject line, no message, just the attachment. 15 minutes later, my phone lit up. I didn't answer, because the mask had finally slipped, and I was done pretending I hadn't seen it. Alyssa called 3 times in a row after I sent the cancellation notice. I watched my phone vibrate across the kitchen counter like it was something alive, something angry and impatient. I didn't pick it up. Not because I was afraid of what she'd say, but because I already knew. I'd heard every version of her outrage before, just never directed at me with this much urgency. When the call stopped, the text started. "What the hell is wrong with you? Are you seriously trying to ruin my life? You're being petty and insane. Jordan's parents already booked flights." Each message was sharper than the last, escalating fast, like she was throwing whatever she could think of to see what would land. Then came the accusations. "You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand not being the center of attention. Fix this right now, or I swear to God." I blocked her. There was a strange calm in that moment. Not relief, not satisfaction, just quiet, like turning off a fire alarm that had been blaring in the background of my life for years. That calm didn't last long. My mother called next. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was long and emotional, filled with words like disappointed, shocked, and ungrateful. She said she couldn't believe I'd do something so hurtful, that Alyssa was devastated, that I was tearing the family apart over something so small. Small. I deleted the voicemail without responding. I thought that would be the end of it, that they'd rage, exhaust themselves, and move on to the next crisis without me. I figured I could finally breathe, reclaim my peace, let them scramble without their built-in problem solver. I underestimated how much power I had just pulled out from under Alyssa. 3 days later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. Not a polite knock, not a neighborly tap. This was loud and sharp, the kind that said, "Open up or else." I muted the television and stood slowly, already knowing who it would be. Alyssa. I watched her through the peephole, hair in a messy bun, eyes wild, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her phone clenched in one hand like a weapon. She knocked again, harder this time, then started yelling my name. "Teresa. You can't do this. Open the door." I didn't move. She kept going, ranting about how I'd ruined everything, how I was sick in the head, how Mom and Dad were on her side, and I'd regret this. At one point, she put someone on speaker, Jordan, I assumed, shouting, "Tell her what you said," but he didn't answer. The neighbors noticed. I saw Mrs. Keene across the street pull her curtains aside. A man walking his dog slowed down, openly watching. Alyssa didn't care. She was unraveling in real time, and for the first time, I wasn't stepping in to contain it. Eventually, her voice cracked. She banged on the door one last time, cursed under her breath, and stormed back to her car. I waited until she drove away before I moved again. That night, Liam texted me. I heard everything. I stared at those 3 words longer than I expected. Then another message came in. "I'm not picking sides, but you're not crazy. It was the closest thing to validation I'd received in weeks. A few days later, my father finally texted, "We need to talk." But by then, something fundamental had shifted. Alyssa's meltdown hadn't just made noise, it had exposed her. The lies she'd been telling were cracking and people were starting to notice. Not everyone was ready to admit it yet, but they would be, because Alyssa wasn't done, and neither was the fallout. The days after Alyssa showed up on my porch felt unreal, like I'd slipped sideways into a version of my life that didn't quite belong to me. The family group chat went silent. No updates, no passive-aggressive memes from my mom, no random logistical questions disguised as concern. Even my dad's, "We need to talk." Message sat there unanswered, hovering like a threat he wasn't ready to follow through on. Alyssa disappeared completely. She blocked me everywhere, or maybe she just didn't know what else to say now that her meltdown had happened in public. Either way, the absence was loud. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being asked to fix anything. I should have felt relieved. Instead, it hit harder than I expected. They were still my family. As toxic and unbalanced as it had been, I'd spent 34 years inside that system, and now suddenly I was on the outside watching it through soundproof glass. No explanations, no closure, just silence. I went to work every day and pretended nothing was wrong. I smiled on Zoom calls, hit my deadlines, cracked dry jokes in the team chat, but I started staying late just to avoid going home. I'd take the long way back, grab food from whatever place was still open, and sit in my car in the parking lot, eating alone, scrolling through my phone, even though there was nothing to see. The worst part wasn't the anger, it was the waiting. Even after blocking Alyssa, even after ignoring my mom's voicemail, even after Liam told me I wasn't crazy, I kept checking my phone, hoping for something real. Not an accusation, not a guilt trip, just a message that said we messed up or thank you or even we're confused but we want to talk. Nothing came. I stopped going to family dinners. Missed Jordan's surprise bachelor barbecue. Yes, apparently that still happened. I only knew because Liam sent me a photo of a folding table covered in beer cans and burgers with a caption that said, "He barely talked to her." Jordan looked miserable in the picture. Alyssa wasn't even in the frame. That was when something shifted inside me. Her wedding, the thing I had poured so much money and emotional energy into, had become my personal crucifixion, and she was perfectly willing to burn everything down as long as the spotlight stayed on her. For what control money pride? I started asking myself that question every night, lying awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and slowly another thought began to form, quieter but steadier. What if this wasn't my downfall? What if this was my beginning? It didn't arrive like some dramatic revelation. There was no soundtrack, no sudden clarity. It started small, embarrassingly small. I cleaned my apartment. Not surface cleaning, not the kind you do when company's coming over. I emptied closets, threw out boxes I'd been dragging from place to place just in case, vacuumed behind the couch, found an old shoebox full of photos I hadn't looked at in years. There was one of me at 20 laughing with friends I'd lost touch with, one of Liam in a ridiculous Halloween costume, and one of Alyssa and me as kids sitting on the living room floor playing cards. I stared at that last one for a long time. We looked happy, or maybe we just looked unaware. That same day, the venue refund hit my account, $3,000, a number I'd stopped expecting to see again. I transferred $5,000 total back into my savings money that had once been earmarked for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. It felt symbolic, like reclaiming something I'd given away too easily. That night, I opened a notebook and started writing. Not journaling, not venting, just listing things, ideas I'd shelved, dreams I'd dismissed as impractical. One line kept coming back to me. What if I built something for myself? I didn't quit my job or reinvent my life overnight. I wasn't looking for escape. I was looking for ownership. I'd always been good with tech, fixing things, setting up networks, troubleshooting problems everyone else found overwhelming. Friends used to joke I was a walking help desk. So I started small. A basic website, a few flyers, posts in local Facebook groups offering affordable tech help. I expected nothing. I got 3 clients the first week. One was an older woman who needed help resetting her Wi-Fi password. Another was a single mom trying to print a school project. The third was a cafe owner whose POS system kept crashing. I fixed it in under 2 hours, and when I was done, he handed me a free meal and said, "You actually listened." That sentence stayed with me, because no one in my family ever had. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something that had nothing to do with Alyssa or weddings or being the responsible one. I felt seen. The side business grew faster than I expected. Not explosively, not in some overnight success story way, just steadily, quietly, the way good things tend to grow when no one is sabotaging you. By the end of the month, I had a dozen regular clients. I set up a simple booking system, registered an LLC, started keeping real books instead of mental tallies. One client redesigned my logo for free after I fixed her tablet. Another referred me to her church group. I even ran a small tech basics workshop at the community center one Saturday morning. And I was happy. Not the loud, performative kind, just grounded, calm. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, stopped waiting for my family to reach out. The silence that had once felt like abandonment started to feel like space. That's why the first alert caught me completely off guard. I was setting up a mesh Wi-Fi system for an elderly couple, sweet people, who paid me in lemon bars and a check when my phone buzzed with a PayPal notification. Dispute opened. Unauthorized charge. My stomach dropped. I stepped outside to read the details, my hands suddenly cold. The name on the complaint made my chest tighten. Alyssa. She was disputing the DJ retainer, the same payment I had canceled weeks earlier, the same one I'd already been refunded for. She claimed I'd used her account without permission. I stared at the screen, half expecting it to change. It didn't. By the time I got home, there were 3 more disputes waiting. One through Zelle, one through Venmo, one from a florist who had already refunded me directly, but had apparently been contacted again by Alyssa, demanding verification and ownership of the transaction. It was frantic, sloppy, aggressive. She wasn't trying to recover money. She was trying to ruin me. For the first time in my life, I didn't panic. I documented everything. Screenshots, receipts, emails, cancellation confirmations. I responded to each dispute calmly, professionally uploading proof without commentary. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I let the facts speak. But something about it felt different from her usual explosions. This wasn't just emotional. This was targeted. She was aiming for my finances, my credibility, my new sense of stability, my name. I didn't want to wait and see what she'd try next. So I prepared. I moved my business accounts to a new bank, changed every password to randomized vault-generated strings, enabled 2-factor authentication on everything, shifted client communication to encrypted platforms, added e-signature contracts across the board. I even consulted a lawyer, not a corporate firm, just a sharp solo attorney named Erica, who specialized in small business and digital fraud. She reviewed everything methodical and quiet, then looked up at me and said, "She doesn't have a case. But if she escalates, you'll want to be ahead of it." I asked what escalation looked like. Erica didn't hesitate. Reputation. The next morning, Liam called. I was halfway through breakfast when my phone rang. His voice was tense. Careful. "Hey, I think you need to know something." My spoon paused midair. "What is it?" "She posted about you." My heart sank. "On Facebook." She had me blocked, but Liam sent screenshots. A long, dramatic post filled with crying emojis and carefully chosen words. She accused me of sabotaging her wedding, stealing money, being emotionally unstable. She warned people against hiring my business. Comments were already piling up. Cousins, distant relatives, a former coworker asking, "Is this true?" That was the moment I understood the real game she was playing. She wasn't lashing out. She was poisoning the well. Because I had taken something from her that mattered more than money. Control. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself in the thread. Instead, I did something she never expected. I stayed calm. I added a transparency page to my website, refund policies, anonymized receipts, vendor agreements, dates, numbers, proof without names. I posted a short professional statement on my business socials clarifying that all wedding-related payments had been canceled and refunded with legal documentation available if needed. Then I made a few quiet calls. One of my clients ran a local events blog. I explained the situation without drama. She offered to write a general piece about vendor fraud and payment disputes. Names changed, facts intact. The article spread. Slowly, subtly, the narrative shifted. Comments on Alyssa's post disappeared. People stopped engaging. A few messaged me privately to say they were sorry for assuming. I felt it in my chest, not triumph, but certainty. I was winning. And Alyssa, she was unraveling. I found out Alyssa was spiraling the same way I'd found out about everything else in this mess through Liam. He sent me a screenshot late one night. Alyssa's Instagram story, white text on a black background, the kind of quote people use when they want to sound enlightened while setting fires behind them. It's funny how narcissists pretend to be calm while destroying everything around them. Protect your peace. I didn't respond. By that point, I'd learned something important: engagement was oxygen, and I was done feeding the fire. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that while she was posting cryptic quotes and lashing out online, someone else had started watching her very closely. Jordan. Her ex-boyfriend reached out the day after the Facebook post went up. A simple message. I don't want to make this worse, but I think you deserve to know the truth. We talked on the phone for over an hour. He sounded exhausted. Not angry, just emptied out. He told me he'd believed Alyssa for a long time, that she'd painted me as cold, controlling, jealous. The overbearing older sister who always needed to be right. I didn't question it, he admitted quietly. Not until she turned it on me. That was when he told me about the recordings. Not secret surveillance. Not anything illegal. Voice memos he'd started keeping because Alyssa had a habit of rewriting conversations, denying things she'd said hours earlier. He'd recorded them to protect himself. Some of those recordings were about me. He sent one first, just a few seconds long. Alyssa's voice casual, almost amused. Teresa will pay for everything, she always does, and then I'll just cut her out. She won't do anything. She never does. Another followed. If she makes a scene, I'll say she's unstable. People believe brides, especially women. She doesn't stand a chance. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional. It was premeditated. I forwarded everything to Erica. She listened to the clips twice. Didn't say a word the first time. Then she leaned back in her chair and said, "We're past defense now." She explained my options: defamation, business damages, a formal cease and desist, real consequences. She asked me one question that mattered. Do you want to go nuclear? I didn't answer immediately, because nuclear meant no going back. No pretending this could be smoothed over at Thanksgiving. No last-minute apologies or forced family forgiveness. Then I thought about every time I'd picked Alyssa up at 2 a.m. because she was too drunk to drive, every rent payment I'd covered, every lie I'd cleaned up behind her, every excuse I'd made so she wouldn't look bad. She'd gone nuclear first. I just hadn't noticed. So I told Erica to proceed. We drafted a formal cease and desist letter outlining the defamation, the false payment disputes, the documented audio evidence. A settlement demand reasonable, not punitive, to cover business losses and legal fees. And because Alyssa wasn't staying at my parents' house anymore, we had it delivered to the friend's apartment she was couch surfing in. Receipts attached, proof embedded, no emotion, just facts. The moment it was delivered, everything changed. The day the cease and desist was delivered, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. The kind of tired that settles into your bones after months of holding your breath. I was at a client's apartment helping her configure a smart thermostat when my phone buzzed with a single message from Erica. It's done. Delivered at 10:42 a.m. I thanked my client, packed up my tools, and drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the hum of the road and the steady beat of my own thoughts. I wasn't bracing for impact anymore. I was past that. I was waiting for the truth to finally collide with the story Alyssa had been telling. It didn't take long. By early afternoon, my phone started lighting up with blocked numbers and unknown callers. I ignored them. Then came the emails, one from Alyssa's subject line in all caps. "Are you serious?" I didn't open it. My mother left a voicemail not long after, her voice trembling, pleading with me to talk to my sister before things went too far. I didn't respond to that either, because things had gone too far the moment Alyssa decided my reputation was collateral damage. The real shift didn't come from my parents. It came from Jordan. Erica had reached out to him formally, asking if he'd be willing to provide a sworn affidavit, verifying the recordings and corroborating the timeline. He agreed without hesitation. He told her he was tired of watching Alyssa destroy people and rewrite reality whenever it suited her. When Alyssa found out her ex-boyfriend was cooperating not with her, but against her, the ground gave way beneath her. Liam filled me in later. She called an emergency family meeting at my parents' house, dragged everyone into the living room like it was a courtroom, printed screenshots, my business posts, the blog article, the legal notice. She paced while she talked, voice sharp, hands shaking, accusing me of orchestrating everything for attention, of turning Jordan against her, of weaponizing my role as the older sister to ruin her life. For the first time, no one interrupted me, because I wasn't there. And for the first time, no one defended her. Liam said my dad stood up mid-rant. No yelling, no drama, just one word that stopped everything. Enough. The room went silent. He told her they'd believed her because it was easier than facing the truth, that I'd warned them quietly, consistently, and they'd chosen comfort over accountability. He said they'd failed me. Alyssa stormed out, slammed the door, and drove away. She was always good at exits. What she was bad at was consequences. The settlement came quickly. $12,500. Enough to cover damages and fees. Not enough to ruin her. Fair. Erica said it was likely my parents fronted the money. I didn't ask. It didn't matter. The apology came next. A single post on Facebook. I said some things about my sister that weren't accurate. I apologize for any confusion caused. No remorse, no ownership, just retreat. But people saw it. The same people who had commented before. The same ones who had asked questions. A few reached out privately. One former client rebooked a large nonprofit project. Another sent a message that simply said, "I read everything. I'm sorry." That was enough. Alyssa moved out of state a month later. Said she needed a fresh start. I didn't ask where. I didn't care. My parents started inviting me to dinner again, acting like time could sand down what had happened. I stayed polite, distant. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't something you owe, it's something you choose. Liam and I grew closer. He helped with client jobs. We grabbed drinks sometimes. No awkwardness, just quiet understanding. And me, I was building something solid. Not just a business, a life. And for the first time, the silence wasn't lonely. It was earned. People think the end of a story like this comes with fireworks. A dramatic confrontation, a screaming match, someone finally breaking down and admitting everything they did wrong in front of witnesses. But real endings are rarely that cinematic. Most of the time they arrive quietly after the noise has burned itself out. Life didn't snap back into place after Alyssa left the state. It softened. The days felt steadier, predictable in a way that no longer scared me. My business kept growing, not wildly, not recklessly, just enough that I brought on 2 part-time contractors to help with overflow. I upgraded my apartment, bought plants that actually stayed alive, started mentoring a few local teens who were curious about tech but didn't know where to start. Every time I sat across from them explaining something simple without judgment, I felt a strange sense of closure. I wondered how different my life might have been if someone had taught me earlier that being useful wasn't the same thing as being valued. My parents still tried. They invited me to dinners, asked how work was going, told me they missed me. I answered kindly, briefly, without reopening doors I'd spent years trying to close. Healing doesn't require access, and love doesn't mean unlimited tolerance. Liam stayed consistent. We talked more than we ever had growing up. Not about Alyssa, about everything else. Music, work, life. He never asked me to forgive her, never minimized what happened. That mattered more than he probably realized. As for Alyssa, I heard about her only in fragments. A mutual cousin mentioned she was starting over. Someone else said she was dating again. I didn't follow up. I didn't check. I didn't need to. Because by then, her absence no longer felt like a loss. It felt like clarity. I used to think revenge meant watching someone fall apart, watching them lose everything the way they tried to take from you. But that wasn't it. Not really. The real revenge was waking up without dread. It was building a life that didn't require permission. It was being calm in rooms that once made me anxious. It was no longer being available for roles I never auditioned for. The irony still makes me smile sometimes. I was labeled dramatic for finally setting a boundary. And yet here I am, grounded, steady, unbothered, while the person who needed chaos to survive disappeared into it. So if you're wondering how this ended, it didn't end with yelling, it didn't end with applause, it didn't even end with forgiveness. It ended with peace, and that was the last word.